As the distress signal got to the UES Indomitable, it was filled with the screams of Thraxian being killed. No one in the galaxy knew how to stop the Voxeri from coming in all the time, so the Thraxian called the humans. The desperate plea was sent to Captain James Hawkins. The cruel Voxeri invaders had beaten the Thraxian defenses with better technology and cruel methods. The Thraxian people were being killed and forced to work as slaves. Hawkins saw the proud Thraxian fleet's remains, now just broken, lifeless hulks floating in space as he got closer to the besieged Thraxian homeworld. The Voxeri had already arrived and killed many civilians as they went across the planet. Kralos, the minister of Thrace, begged Hawkins with tears in his eyes to stop the killing of his people. They had no other choice but to trust Hawkins and his experienced team. People would wipe out an entire species if they failed here. Hawkins promised to fight off the attackers or die trying. He had a bold plan to attack the Voxeri occupation from the inside and break up their command system, but it would be the hardest thing he had ever done. As the Indomitable got ready for its frantic attack, the Thraxians' fate was in danger. Hawkins put together a group of his best troops and gave them sleek power armor that made them stronger and faster. Kralos joined as their guide, and each of his 4 eyes blinked with purpose. They were crammed into a dropship that fell through the thick smoke of the Thraxian homeworld. Aerial defense fire flew past the viewports. The ship just barely dodged a rocket and then landed in a crater about half a click away from the enemy command center. Once they got off the ground, the strike team spread out with their pulse weapons ready. They moved slowly over the ruins of a city that used to be great. The Vauxhall attack was so fierce that spires and statues were broken and knocked over. As soon as a Vauxhall guard saw them, plasma bolts shot through the air. The huge aliens shot from behind a wall that had fallen down. Hawkins and his group hid. Hawkins barked, "Light them up." The humans fired, and their powerful rifles went right through the thick skin of the Vauxhall, but more enemies came from all sides. The humans surrounded the area and killed wave after wave of enemies. Bullet shells and ozone from burning flesh filled the air. Even though Krenos was a politician, he was surprisingly good with a sidearm. He hit a Voxeri that was too close and dropped it. "We can't wait, Captain. This way to get to the command center." As they pushed through the damaged streets, they quickly sent out Vauxhall fire teams. Better training and technology for people made the difference against the attackers' large numbers. Along the way, they found things that made them sick. There were piles of dead Thraxian people, sobbing survivors being taken away as slaves, and Voxeri death squads roaming freely. Hawkins was so angry that he could hardly hold it in. He put a plasma bolt between the eyes of a Voxeri beast while pulling a crying Thrax child behind him. He growled, "These jerks are going to pay." In front of them was the command center, which looked like a protected pyramid full of gun emplacements. It would be crazy to go in, but Kralos had a thought. The ambassador showed the captain a blank map and said, "Captain, my intelligence report shows a weak supply depot 4 clicks west. They would not be able to fight a war if we destroyed their fuel and ammunition stores." Hawkins gave a mean grin. "I like how you think. Let's give these aliens something really bad to scream about." They went in a different direction and blasted their way through occupied land. As news of the attack spread, panicked Vauxhall communications chatter went through the roof. They did everything they could to fight back, but it wasn't enough. Shock troops made of power armor were a new type of enemy for them. The supply center was a huge building with laser cannons all around it. Vehicles from Vauxhall were filling up with fuel and nuclear fuel. Hawkins knew who to shoot. "Hit them quick and hard." He yelled over the comm, "Catch those jerks with their pants down." Both humans and Krelos charged with their guns drawn. As the pulse shots hit their targets, pieces of Vauxhall bodies flew everywhere. Hawkins focused on a laser gun on a tower that was slamming his team into the ground with intense blasts. He used the arm pod on his suit to fire a micro-missile. The projectile shot into the window of the tower and went off. A cloud of vaporized metal and flesh rose from the gun when it went off. Hawkins yelled, "Move up and protect the depot." He and his team broke through the gates of the depot and killed guards one by one, but the Voxheri fought like animals that were trapped and needed to protect their food and water. Hawkins was hit by a plasma bolt that cut him across the armor. He clenched his teeth and shot his enemy twice in the head. As they dove into the thick of it, purple Vauxhall blood mixed with red blood from people. Hawkins was a one-man army who could fire and reload so quickly that it was hard to see. He led his troops by example and showed them how to be brave in battle. They slowly pushed the enemy back from the base grounds. Hawkins could almost taste victory. At that moment, a panicked radio message was heard over the fighting noise. "Captain, huge warp marks have been found," his XO's voice cried. "Damn it, it's an invasion fleet. Weapons will be hot and on top of us in no time." As Hawkins looked up at the angry red sky, Vauxhall reinforcements began to appear in orbit. Hundreds of new enemy ships were ready to release hell. The only thing that stood between them and the Earth was the Indomitable. Through the radio, Hawkins told them, "Go at them full speed. Give us as much time as you can. We'll clean up this supply store and make room for you." He knew that by telling his team to charge, they would almost certainly die, but the Thraxian needed them to do it. They knew the Indomitable would not let them down. Hawkins looked at the supply stores that were full of explosives. They gave him an idea that was as desperate and brave as the attack run on his ship. He told his strike team, "We're going to blow this whole depot to pieces. Set off as many bombs as you can carry and place them near the ammunition and fuel stores. The whole continent will be lit up by this place. Let's move like we have a plan." They worked quickly to add as many det charges as possible before the Vauxhall cars showed up. They were the only hope for the people of Thrace, but no one knew if they would make it. They couldn't fail at this point. The space fight was very high above the Thraxian homeworld, which was under attack. It took a lot of courage for the brave UES Indomitable to lead the human fleet against the technologically advanced Voxari troops. Even though they were outnumbered and outgunned, the humans fought like fighters who knew what they did could decide the fate of their whole species. Hawkins and his strike team kept trying desperately to get into the Vauxhall supply center on the planet's surface. People pressed their attack and pulse weapons fired, micro-missiles flew through the air, and explosions shook the ground. A lot of Vauxhall guards died because they couldn't handle how hard the humans were attacking. But while they were fighting, Hawkins' comm unit sent an important message. It was his XO on the Indomitable, and her voice was shaking from stress that she was barely able to control. "Dear Captain, the Invincible is taking a lot of damage. Shields are breaking, and there are holes in the hull on several decks. We can't hold out for much longer with these extra troops coming in." Hawkins clenched his teeth and his mind was racing. The only thing that stood between the Voxari force and the planet was the Indomitable. The Thracians would die if it fell, but he also knew that the ground mission had to go well in order to break the invaders' hold on the world. The worst choice of his life was made by him. Thought Indomitable, "No matter what, you have to hold the line. We'll finish the job down here and keep the jerk's attention off of you. Instead, why don't you have your orders, sir? Hawkins is out." He cut the communication link with a heavy heart, knowing that he had just put his ship and crew in a dangerous battle to stay alive. But there was no time to feel bad about it now. The job had to come first. He yelled to his strike team, "Listen up. It looks like the Unbreakable is in trouble. To help her, we should make hell break loose down here. Take twice as long to get to that command center." Their fights were so fierce that they left a path of damage through the middle of the Voxari occupation. As they stormed the command tower, boots with power armor walked over the bodies of the dead enemy. As Vauxhall guards tried in vain to stop the humans, they were killed by savage plasma fire. Finally, they broke into the inner area, which was a huge room filled with evil energy. But what they found inside was beyond belief. Not only were there Voxari, but also a bunch of different foreign species, including Thraxian, Crete, Varunai, and others that Hawkins knew had been wiped out by Vauxhall. But instead of being scared prisoners, they stood as troops next to their masters, their weapons trained on people. God, Krelos took a deep breath. There are different kinds of Voxari. The species that make up this group are all slaves and have to fight for them. Hawkins snarled in anger. "It doesn't matter what they are, we're ending their fear right now." With a war cry, the humans charged at the enemy and dove right into them. A lot of people were fighting very close together, and it was a terrible brawl with flashing blades, hammering gun butts, and point-blank gunfire. Hawkins was a war machine that killed with every blow. It stained with the blood of 12 different races. At the middle of it all was a huge Voxari warlord who was barking orders at his mind-locked soldiers. Hawkins focused on him because he knew this was the key to the enemy's plans. When they met, it was a battle of titanic strength, with human rage up against alien cruelty. When the plasma axe hit Hawkins, he dove to avoid it, and the heat from it burned his hair. He rammed his pulse weapon right into the warlord's jaw and fired straight at him, killing scales, flesh, and bone. But the captain of the Vauxhall was incredibly tough. It hissed in pain as it clamped its claws around Hawkins' throat and slammed him against a wall. The whole world was red. His vision got blurry. The alien's stinky breath was touching his face. That's not how it could end. The Thracians were counting on him. People on his team were counting on him. Hawkins finally got his power together and punched the warlord in the groin with his armored knee. It sounded awful. The Vox-Terry let go of its hold and howled. It gave Hawkins the chance he needed. He hit the alien in the throat with an armored hand, which blocked its airway. He then hit it in the chest with a micro-rocket as it fell back. When the rocket went off, it blew a horrible hole through the warlord's body. The Vauxhall commander fell over, and its puppet men fell down with it, like marionettes whose strings were cut. Hawkins stood over his defeated enemy, hurt and bloody but not bowed. Kralos yelled in shock as he watched the communication channels. "Captain, the Vox-Terry forces are in chaos." The group lost its unity when the leader was killed. It was done. Hawkins forced a sad smile as he looked around the destroyed command center, which was full of the bodies of species that had been captured and forced to work as slaves. Today they had broken the attacker's chain of command and dealt a blow to the Vox-Terry war machine. This showed that the alien threat was not unbeatable. But a lot had been lost, and the fight wasn't over yet. He was just hoping that his brave team would still be alive to see this win. The Thraxian would live another day, but there were many other worlds out there that were hurting under the heavy weight of Vox-Terry rule. He promised that people would stand up to the invaders and be a lighthouse of resistance. In the darkness, the Unstoppable would lead the way in this war across the stars until all slave races were set free. Hawkins put more bullets into his pulse rifle. The room was filled with smoke, and the sound of a new clip clicking could be heard. There was still work to do. The story is now over. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you like this story and want to help me out. If someone says, "I like the story," I will heart every single one of them. Thanks for your time.